O ye beloved of the Lord, be united, stand ye together, and cleave tenaciously to the sure handle of the covenant. Bend your energies towards exalting the word of God, so that the light of truth may envelop the whole of creation, and the darkness of hatred and error may be utterly dispelled.
He is God. O true believer in the verses of God, it is said that the greatest power in the world is the power of an all-compelling sovereignty and the might of an all-subduing government. However, the utmost that such might and power can achieve is to besiege men and conquer fortified strongholds. Such power and might is only made manifest by the aid of massed troops and conquering armies. Yet reflect thou on the power and ascendancy of the greatest name, on its might and dominion. Ponder how, though alone and forsaken, with none to help or succor him, he, through the might and power of God and the sovereignty of the kingdom, subdued the realm of being and conquered the citadels of the hearts of men. He prevailed over the whole world and established his authority over all existence. Single-handedly, he scattered the battalions of the earth, unaided. He defeated the unyielding hosts of darkness. In this day, the evidences of these victories exist in the invisible realm, but in the future they will appear in the visible plane as well. Then shall all witness the truth of the verse, behold the confusion that hath befallen the tribes of the defeated.
He is the all-glorious. O thou who art enraptured by the sweet savors of God, make haste toward the forgiveness and mercy of the Lord. Press on unto the wellspring of grace and compassion. Rush forth to the fountainhead of bounty and favor. That is, arise to exalt the word of God, to diffuse the sweet savors of God, to strive to spread the light of God, to kindle the fire of love of God, to hold fast unto the covenant and testament of God, and to stand firm by his gracious aid in the cause of God. It behooveth one such as thee to be even as a banner raised above all other banners, which waveth in breezes of holiness, wafting from the meads of the loving kindness of thine ancient Lord, and is set astir by the sweet-smelling fragrances that are shed abroad from the Abba kingdom. Glorified be my Lord, the Most High.
O my God, O thou who endowest every just power and equitable dominion with abiding glory and everlasting might, with permanence and stability, with constancy and honor. Aid thou by thy heavenly grace every government that acteth justly towards its subjects, and every sovereign authority derived from thee that shieldeth the poor and the weak under the banner of its protection. I beseech thee by thy divine grace and surpassing bounty to aid this just government, the canopy of whose authority is spread over vast and mighty lands, and the evidences of whose justice are apparent in its prosperous and flourishing regions. Assist, O my God, its hosts, raise aloft its ensigns, bestow influence upon its word and its utterance, protect its lands, increase its honor, spread its fame, reveal its signs, and unfurl its banner through thine all-subduing power and thy resplendent might in the kingdom of creation. Thou verily aidest whomsoever thou willest, and thou verily art the Almighty, the most powerful.
He is God, O peerless Lord, praised be thou for having kindled that light in the glass of the concourse on high, for having guided that bird of faithfulness to the nest of the Alpha Kingdom. Thou hast joined that precious river to the mighty sea. Thou hast returned that spreading ray of light to the Sun of Truth. Thou hast welcomed that captive of remoteness into the garden of reunion, and led him along to look upon thee, to thy presence in thy bright place of lights. Thou art the Lord of tender love. Thou art the last goal of the yearning heart. Thou art the dearest wish of the mercy.
O thou beloved of my heart and soul, I have no refuge save thee. I raise no voice at dawn save in thy commemoration and praise. Thy love encompasseth me, and thy grace is perfect. My hope is in thee. O God, give me a new life at every instant, and bestow upon me the breaths of the Holy Spirit at every moment, in order that I may remain steadfast in thy love, and attain unto great felicity. Perceive the manifest light, and be in the state of utmost tranquility and submissiveness. Verily thou art the giver, the forgiver, the compassionate.
He is God, O thou pure God. Let these saplings which have sprouted by the stream of thy guidance become fresh and verdant through the outpourings of the clouds of thy tender mercy. Cause them to be stirred by the gentle winds wafting from the meads of thy oneness, and suffer them to be revived through the rays of the sun of reality, that they may continually grow and flourish and burst into blossoms and fruit. O Lord God, bestow upon each one understanding, give them power and strength, and cause them to mirror forth thy divine aid and confirmation, so that they may become highly distinguished among the people. Thou art the mighty and powerful.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh my God, thou art the who dost endowest me every just power and equipable domain with abiding the glory and the everlasting might, with and stability, with constancy, and honor aid thou by the heavenly grace and the government that acteth justly towards the its subject, and every sovereign, the authority I derived from the and shieldeth the poor and the weak under and the banner of its protections. I beseech thee, by thy divine grace and surpassing bounty, to aid is just government and the canopy of whose authority is spread over vast and mighty lands, and the evidence of whose justice is parent in thy Earth and flourishing in regions and assist the, oh my God, that is the hosts and aloft in its and signs bestow upon its word regions and its ensure utterance, protect its land, increase the honor or spread its fame, reveal its signs and unfurl its banner, though thine in all subduing power and thy resplendent might in thy kingdom of creation, thou verily aidest whomsoever, or thou willest, and thou verily art the Almighty, the most powerful.
He is God, O thou who circlest in adoration about the spot round which circle the concourse on high. Raise thou thy hand in gratitude at the threshold of the one true God, and say, O thou the highest aspiration of every ardent lover, O thou the guide of every wandering soul, thou hast favored this feeble servant with thine infinite blessing, and led this hapless and lowly one onto the threshold of thy oneness. Thou hast lifted to these parched lips the living waters of thy loving kindness, and revived this weary and weathered soul with breezes of divine mercy. I yield thee thanks for having bestowed upon me a full portion of thy most gracious favor, and invested me with the honor of attaining unto thy sacred threshold. I beseech an infinite share from the bounties of thy kingdom on high. Grant thine assistance, confer thy gracious favor.
All right, dear friends. That concludes the prepared portion of the prayers. And so now, if anyone feels moved, if they would like to share a prayer, I know Gannett, you like to share a prayer sometimes, so please feel free to unmute yourself and share a prayer.
Praise be thou, O Lord my God. Sanctify mine eyes and my ears, and my tongue, and my heart, and my spirit, and my soul, and my body, and my entire being, from turning unto anyone save thee. Give me then to drink from the cup that brimeth, from the sealed wine of thy glory. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Now, couple things with the young people here. I know there was somebody went to their senior prom last night, right? 2 people on this call went to the prom, right? Is Ayana still here? Or she dropped out. 1 person. All right. Nice.
Mr. Emilio, was that you?
Oh, you're muted.
Was that me for what?
Did you go to your prom last night?
Yes.
Congratulations, buddy.
How was it?
Good.
Good.
Nice.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Very
Excellent.
excited.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, congratulations.
You got back late, if you can tell.
Yes, it was a big party last night for Emilio. Good job. Good job. Congratulations. Excellent. Oh, Turner wanted me to just turn off my virtual background for because his hair is not showing up because he put blue dye in it. So it looks he has blue hair job.
Oh, it's actually blue in his hair.
Blue, yeah.
Oh, very cool. Where'd you get that?
Yeah, where'd we get that? Mommy ordered it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mommy ordered it.
Of course, you can get anything online now, huh?
Yes. Very proud he wanted to share.
Very neat. Like it.
Now it disappears.
Oh.
What?
You have a fountain in your head.
Yeah.
Who has a fountain in his head?
Turner.
There you go.
Look.
Excellent. There you go. All right.
Blue hair.
Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone, to this beautiful, lovely Sunday. We are kind of continuing a little bit of our conversation from last week. We are talking about one of the recent letters from the Universal House of Justice. One of the things, when I became a Baha'i, I became Baha'i in 1995, August 1995. And one of the reasons why I became a Baha'i was, I always had this sense of social justice and such, and I wanted to make the world a better place. When I was a teenager, my room, I would have photos and like posters of like Charles Barkley and Michael Jordan and quotes from like Malcolm X, like all over my room. So like, I always had this sense of social justice. But one of the things that attracted me to the Baha'is was that they actually were trying to put together a plan to make the world a better place. It wasn't just a notion. It was like, okay, we want to make the world a better place, but this is how we're going to do it. These are the things we're going to do to make it a better place. And so that was what attracted me to the faith. And that's how I became a Baha'i, was looking at what they were doing in this systematic plan that they had. So we're looking at that plan right now. We do plans in different like time frames. So sometimes it's a 10-year plan, sometimes it's a 5-year, 1 year, depending on the circumstances. So right now we're just starting what's called a 1-year plan, and it's pretty exciting. And so we're reading the Ridván Message, which kind of outlines some of the things we're trying to do in that 1-year plan, and some of the things that we did this past 5-year plan. So it's kind of interesting. So our dear brother Nabil is going to lead us in this discussion. He put together a wonderful PowerPoint. Actually, I'll share that link in the chat in a second, so you can pull it up yourself. But he broke it down into sections and everything, and it has been fantastic. So with that, I turn it over to Nabil.
Oh, thank you. So let me, I guess, share the screen here. And I'll go into presentation mode here. That will work. Okay. All right. So one thing that I can't tell is anything blocking your view of the full screen here? Because I have a few little things pulled up on my.
No, it looks good.
Okay, good. All right. So friends, what we're going to do is we're going to read through the Ridván Message. It's 8 pages long in its published PDF form. There are basically 4 sections, and the sections are, I didn't designate these. These are as the Universal House of Justice designated. First of all, I I don't know everybody on the call. Would maybe a quick, I would like to know who, and let me stop sharing for just a quick second. I forgot. It's really good that, you know, I would like to, if I need to introduce the Universal House of Justice or the concept of that institution, I'm happy to do that. I'd just like to know where everyone is at with things. So maybe a quick round of introductions, if y'all don't mind. Now, this is being broadcast on YouTube, so if you'd rather not, I totally understand. Otherwise, my name is Nabil Yazdani. I have lived in Austin since 1992. I grew up in a small country in South America. And prior to that was born in Iran, so.
I'm Dustin Grant. I have been in Austin for, I guess, maybe 15 years now. 10 years. I'm exaggerating. New to this, kind of just, I've been reading and convinced my partner here to join in. So thanks for letting us kind of drop in here. But really interested and looking forward to kind of learning more.
Okay.
So concept-wise, consider me a novice to everything.
Thank you for being here and very welcome, both you and Sai. Sai, right? Is that how I pronounce?
Yes, it's pronounced Sai. Hi. Happy to be here. We are exploring and looking forward to learning new things. I think we're both, spirituality is a big piece, but how we are doing that, the structure to it, I think we're still exploring. So excited to be here and learn more.
Welcome.
I'm Giselle Cederquist. Been in Austin since 2012. We moved from the snowy north, which was all really good until that ice storm a while back. But a day like today makes us happy to be here. And I guess I should mention, my husband and I have been Baha'i since the early 1970s.
Okay. I know one of your neighbors from the snowy north has already spoken, but he can maybe quickly.
Yes. In fact, when some of the first Baha'i meetings I ever went to were at Drew's house in upstate New York, many years ago when I was 7 years old. So it took me, about 12 years from the first time I heard about the Baha'i faith to becoming a Baha'i. So, because I heard about when I was about my son's age. And then, small world. And then Drew and her son ended up moving to Austin 20 years later. So how that happens, pretty funny.
We're following you.
Yeah, right.
My name is Joanna Salcedo. I'm a fairly new Baha'i officially, but yeah, my journey has been long. I think the first time I became aware, in fact, I know the first time I became aware of the Baha'i faith was in California in 1991. So it took me that many years because I just officially got my card. What was it? A year and a half? Almost 2 years ago now, actually.
Right.
June is my 2-year anniversary. So it took me a while. But what attracted me to the faith is definitely the centralized community effort towards racial justice and conversations of equity and a true representation of so many different cultures and traditions from everywhere in the faith. And I think one of the first times I came to the Baha'i Center, there were at least 7 languages that people were praying in, or offering prayers during devotions, and that's really important to me, is to have representation and to hear the different voices that are in our community.
Anyone else who would like to introduce themselves? Emilio is my son. He's, I'm not sure where on the screen he is to you, but that's my firstborn.
Okay, this is Gannat Abraham, and I'm originally from East Africa, and I became a Baha'i when it was in 1987, and I was attracted to become a Baha'i because it was the progress because of its progressive revelation. I was a Christian, and when they told me that Baha'i, when you become a Baha'i, it doesn't mean to deny other religions, but just it is the complement of other religions and the fulfillment of all the prophecies which was in the Bible. So I accepted it, and I'm so happy, and it was really a turning point in my life. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Gannett.
story here too, Gannett. I spent some time right after becoming Baha'i. I went to East Africa. I was in Ethiopia, and I just want to say what it's like. Ethiopians have a very, very strong faith. And I remember we would go to fireside chats like this in Ethiopia. And like there wasn't a topic. You would just sit down, this is right by the university, just sit down, and then people would pull out pieces of paper from their pockets. And they had like through the week studied about the Baha'i faith. They're mostly Christians, and they'd say about the Baha'i faith, and then just ask you specific questions about passages, about the Bible concepts and stuff. And it was like they took it so seriously. Like I had never, as an American, I never experienced that kind of like this is our faith, we believe in this. So when Gannett says, as a Christian, she became a Baha'i. I could see that process of how steadfast and firm these people were in their faith, and how amazing it is. So every time I hear her talk, it reminds me of those beautiful Ethiopians.
Thank you. Chris.
Good morning. I'm Shore, also from the snowy north. I lived in Austin the year before pandemic and fell in love with your community. And anytime I get a chance, I drop in. Right now, I'm back in New York, and I'm happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
Welcome, Shore.
Hi, everyone. My name's Sarah. I, like Dustin and Sai, am very new, kind of doing some explorations. And I was raised, Presbyterian. My husband was raised Catholic, and we have a 7-year-old son that we're really trying to figure out how we want to introduce, faith, and really are attracted to the more holistic things that we've seen so far and read about the Baha'i faith.
Your last name is Conkling.
Emilio, thank you for your contribution, but I don't think you're correct. Welcome, Sarah. Welcome. Did you mention how you found out? You said you read about it?
Oh, you know what? I don't think I did. I don't know how. It was an animated video that I saw, and I don't remember how I came to. I definitely was searching, but I don't know how I came to it. And it just kind of was I think, very big picture of what the Baha'i faith is, and really liked what we saw.
Great. Welcome. So Karen, Vanessa, if you would like to introduce yourself, you're very welcome to.
Okay, good morning. This is Karen, and I've been a Baha'i since I was 8 years old. My parents became Baha'is, so I was really lucky, I guess, to be raised in the faith, and my parents were Quakers before that, so they didn't see as much of a leap between the beliefs. That the Quakers and Baha'i had a lot of the social justice and the equality and all of that really fit in with the belief structures already had. And I really kind of consider myself sort of coming back into the Baha'i faith when I was an adult, a little bit older. I lived in Bolivia, and Bolivia has a lot of very strong Baha'i communities there. There's a lot of Baha'is, there's entire villages, they have radio stations, and that really kind of drew me back into the faith when I had strayed a bit as an adult and kind of reinforced my faith. It was just the wonderful Baha'i communities of Bolivia are just, consider them kind of my spiritual parents in some ways.
That's awesome. Okay. I see a note. We're gonna skip Vanessa, but she did want to let folks know that she found out about the faith from. Oh, is it okay? Let me know if it's okay for me to read it. It's cool. She found out on TV that from The Bachelor, one of the contestants. But she had previously found out about it as a kid. She'd gone to a fireside from a dear friend of hers.
Okay, so people want to know this. One of the contestants on The Bachelor comes from a Baha'i family who I knew in high school. We were good friends. She was like, yeah, and I remember that episode. That's really funny. Yeah. So reality TV. I never watched it, but yeah. It's really
pretty cool.
It was the only season I really watched.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I found it really boring, but.
Yeah, I'm friends on Facebook with her, and we went to the same high school, so I knew her for 3 years. Yeah.
Are you from Oregon? Was she from Oregon?
She was from Washington at the time, but we went to boarding school in British Columbia, Canada, on Vancouver Island, and so it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I went to firesides as a kid and didn't know it from an international group. Like my parents were in a group, I don't know. And so I had no idea until I told my friend. He's like, Vanessa, you've been to firesides. I was like, what? He's like, remember you came to my house? My dad's Baha'i. I was like, what? How did I miss this?
Oh, that's great. Well, I think that I'm glad you mentioned that. There's several, sort of principles, sort of key principles in our faith. And, one of them is about sort of our relationship with other religions. The Baha'i faith believes in this concept of progressive revelation. It was mentioned earlier, but, and that is that God reveals himself to humanity progressively and over time, and providing the right guidance at the time that we need it, across millennia. And that really all these are part of a divine sort of, divine revelation. Baha'u'llah calls it the changeless faith of God, eternal in the past and eternal in the future. So that there's really harmony in all of this, and that all the spiritual teachings are really the same amongst all the religions about how to conduct oneself, how to live. And we see a lot of social teachings, how to structure one's society and things like that changing, because that, needs adjusting over time, because our society has evolved over time. But also that we are to not have, we don't have clergy in our faith, so we don't have, anyone that holds any particular spiritual rank or anything like that within the community. Everyone is supposed to investigate the faith for themselves and investigate the truth for themselves. And so we all we all have the responsibility to study the guidance, the writings, and we share our thoughts, but one person's idea about how something doesn't control what others have to think about it. And so, and that's one of the social teachings that has changed over time, because in the past, most of the population was not literate, and you needed someone who was learned, who could read and tell people what the holy writings were saying. But at this point, this is, we're at the stage in our, progress as a, as a species and as a creation, to be able to do that for ourselves, and universal education, which is another principle of our faith, is required to be able to accomplish that. Everyone, must be educated, and then be able to discern, seek the truth, and then follow it. Once you find what you're looking for, then that becomes the next responsibility, is to follow it. But also, if you hold the truth, to not try to impose it on someone else. And so even though you are trying to maybe spread the message, we don't have clergy, but we do, people are to actively maybe try to teach the faith and let people know about it. However, not in a way that is proselytizing, not in a way that is argumentative, not in a way that is overbearing. We are supposed to offer something, and if it not be accepted, to let it be. And so that is what Baha'is try to do. So I take heart in the experience Vanessa cited, where she was at a fireside and she didn't even realize it was a Baha'i fireside. So I'm sure the love that was in the meeting was apparent, but there didn't seem to be anything necessarily overbearing going on. So thank you everyone who introduced themselves. I see our friend Chris Johnson has also joined. Chris, we're all introducing ourselves very quickly. We have a few friends who are relatively new, finding out about the faith, and are on their path of investigating. Would you like to introduce yourself briefly? And if you maybe need some time to set up, that's fine. We can come back to you, Chris, anytime. So this, going to the topic we're talking about on this message that we call the Ridván message. Ridván is a 12-day period in our on our calendar that celebrates the time period when the prophet founder of our faith, Baha'u'llah, declared to those around him that he had the station of being a manifestation of God, of being the latest in the line of these teachers, these messengers who have had in whom the Holy Spirit was present and they brought the message, a message from God, and established religions, among them being, Krishna, Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, and so Moses. And so Baha'u'llah, he declared in the year 1863 that he was the latest in this line. And his name is an Arabic name, but it translates to glory of God. And so he, going back to the year, again, 1863, that was when the Baha'i faith, started, with a precursor being 19 years before that, 1844, when another manifestation of God named by the Bab sort of foretold his coming and was preparing people for that. But this Ridván period, this 12-day period that we have every year, late April, around the 20th or 21st of April through May 1st or 2nd, is a joyful time, and we get this message from the governing body of the Baha'is called the Universal House of Justice. At this point, that is a group of 9 individuals that are elected every 5 years by representatives of nations of pretty much, you know, all the nations in the world where there are Baha'i communities, and they number over 170. I don't have the exact number with me. 180, and that you know, they are elected every, you know, for a 5-year term. And Baha'i elections, we actually just had Baha'i elections. Ridvan is when we also have our elections. Every year there are elections on the local level to elect 9 people to have an assembly, and also at a national level to also have 9 people to, you know, to have an assembly for each country. The interesting thing is that the 9 individuals that are either on the local spiritual assemblies or these national assemblies or the Universal House of Justice, as individuals carry really no authority, no, you know, we are all just members of the community. However, if as an institution, when decisions are made, then those are, you know, sort of the institution is what matters. And if you serve on the institution, then that's what you do. But as an individual, you don't really hold any kind of particular, you know, sway or any more insight than anyone else. And so the Universal House of Justice, oh, one more thing, sorry, because the elections just happened, and we also just had municipal elections yesterday. A contrast is very apparent to me, at least, in that in Baha'i elections there is no campaigning, there is no nominating. It is done through secret ballot, and it is done through prayer, you know, after prayer and reflection, and people, you know, are not supposed to discuss who they voted for or who others should vote for. So it's a very private and reflective process, and not one of campaigning and boasting or, you know, singing one person's praises or putting another person down or anything like that. The Baha'i faith is about unity. The essential sort of overarching message or theme for this time, for this current revelation is unity. So that's another feature. So going back to this, to our Universal House of Justice, they send out a message every Ridvan, and sometimes it's a page long, and sometimes it's 2 and 3. And 1 year it was 10 pages long. This year it was 8 pages long. So that was what we were going to pick up and start reading. However, I've been talking a lot, and I want to see if anyone has any questions before I go on. Okay, so I will go on, but I will also say this, that I am absolutely fine with anybody interjecting and it's not an interruption. It is feel free to interject and ask questions or offer insight or comments. And we would like to do that actually as we read each paragraph. I'm going to stop briefly and see if anyone has any thoughts or ideas, and then we can keep going.
I do want to interject one quick thing. I noticed that Amanda Ripley, who she's a New York Times bestseller. I don't know if anyone had seen this. She had written a book about high conflict, and she talked about which examines kind of the adversarial elements of our society and political system and such. And she actually spent a good deal of time. She's not a Baha'i, but she did this research, and she spent a good deal of time talking about how the unique aspects of the Baha'i approach towards community, building community and stuff, and how it takes away a lot of the adversarial aspects that makes things easier. In fact, I'll put a link to it in the chat. It's really interesting. She mentions the fact that because, Baha'is, we're not partisan and stuff, we don't have, I know some of us come from a Catholic background, a couple of us in this call, and sometimes you get these ideas and stuff and these groups, these people believe in this, these people believe in that, right? But as Baha'is, we just have an essential oneness. We're not allowed to kind of bring ourselves into all these different groups. So even when we consult, for example, we don't have debates about what to do in the community, right? Some people have debates, like it's one person takes one side and one person, what should we do? But no, we consult, right? And everybody comes up with an idea. So for example, we'll consult about like how to do, children's classes in the community, or how to do junior youth classes in the community. And we'll be like, okay, so what's the best way? For example, we're like, okay, so what community in Austin? I remember one time we had a consultation about which communities in Austin really needed the a junior youth program. So junior youth spiritual empowerment is this program to teach kids how to be active in their community and to engage themselves. And so we looked at a map and we looked at the statistics and we tried to find some of the more troubled communities that really needed more help and assistance. And we're like, okay, we're going to focus on this area because this has the highest number of junior youth in the area, with a significant number of indicators showing that they need this kind of program. They need these opportunities for growth. So we consult about that, right? And then that's how we operate about these plans. So yeah, I'll put that in the chat. Maybe I'll put this on our website, austinbahai.org. I'll put this up there so you can watch it as well. So because I thought it was a fascinating little examination of what we do as Baha'is from an outside perspective.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing that, Chris. And I'll add to that. It does not at all mean that we don't have differing opinions. In fact, there is a one of the quotes in our writings talks about that the spark of truth, only coming from the clash of differing opinions. It's how you go about getting there, right? And the tone and and in Baha'i consultation, you bring an idea and you set it in front, as you essentially bring it to the group and you lay it down, metaphorically and let go of it and let it take whatever form it wants. If someone else wants to take and build on it, they can. If no one even touches it, that's fine too. You kind of you kind of bring it as a contribution, and you're supposed to sort of disassociate yourself from that opinion once you've brought it forward. And that allows you to consider other ideas and opinions as well, sort of thing. So it's hard to do, and we don't do it always well. So that's it is something, we have guidance, and we are constantly striving to live up to it. And that is really what a Baha'i does is that's okay, I've signed on to this, and this is what I'm going to try and do. This is my, the effort that I can make towards this. And so, so I would like to share this. Let's see, I have to go back to screen sharing. There we go. And there we go. All right, so we can see this. So on the 8 pages, so the Universal House of Justice, when they sent this out, it was broken out in 22 paragraphs, and one that is as long as a page and one that is 2 sentences. But most of them, sort of, chunks that we can read through pretty well. Number 13 is on the long side, so we'll probably break it up between 2 people as we read it. We'll start up on section 2 because we did section 1 last time, and so we'll pick up here by paragraph 8 and read on and try to finish this section, or get as far as we can. I realize it's 11:30 now. We'll see how we get. I don't want it to be a rushed thing. If we have any thoughts, we can stop and talk about it. And so the Universal House of Justice is using sort of the first 2 sections to reflect on what has happened in the Baha'i world the last 5 years, when we had a series of what they call 5-year plans on how to carry forward this process of community building that the Baha'i world has been engaged in since 1996. So it's reflecting also on the past 25 years, when there's been these series of 5-year plans that have that our Universal House of Justice has set out, and trying to encourage areas clusters, meaning areas, around, cities and villages and whatnot, to create more activities in terms of educational activities, spiritual education, of children and adolescents. Also having devotional gatherings, also doing, acts of service, for one's community, and also engaging in discourses in society. So we'll pick up here by paragraph 8. And with that said, I have tried to keep the color coding a little bit consistent here. All right, so I would like to get volunteers to read. So someone please unmute your microphone, and let's read in one paragraph at a time. When we get to 13, we'll probably break it up among 2 people because it's across 4 slides.
Do you want us just to volunteer or what?
Please, yes, please do.
Okay, I'll read this paragraph. We are conscious that naturally the realities of communities differ greatly. Different national communities and different places within those communities began the series of plans at different points of development. Since then, they have also developed at different speeds and have attained different levels of progress. This in itself is nothing new. It has always been the case that conditions and places vary, as does the degree of receptivity found there. But we perceive too a swelling tide whereby the capacity, confidence, and accumulated experience of most communities are rising, buoyed by the success of their sister communities near and far. As an example, while souls who arose to open a new locality in 1996 lacked nothing for courage, faith, and devotion, today their counterparts everywhere combine those same qualities with knowledge, insights, and skills that are the accumulation of 25 years of effort by the entire Baha'i world to systematize and refine the work of expansion and consolidation.
So are there any thoughts on this paragraph?
Well, I'm thinking maybe we need to just define a little what is expansion and consolidation.
Yeah.
Those are kind of.
Would you like to take a stab at it?
So expansion would be reaching larger circles of interested peoples in learning more about the Baha'i faith. Consolidation is the process of developing capacity within those peoples to become agents of change in their own communities.
Yeah.
I was going to say, give a concrete example of how this works in Austin, for instance. So, for example, when we had chosen a neighborhood where we thought a lot of junior youth were in need of the Junior Youth Spiritual Empowerment Program, which is designed to help them become active participants in the community. So we, so some Baha'is went to the high school. I think this was Lamar High School, if I recall correctly. And they set up a table and they're like, okay, so what we want to do is we want to find out if any of the high school students would be interested in helping mentor the younger teens in this program. And so what we'll do is, we'll train them. So a couple of them were interested. So we help train them in this process of how to do this. It's like, okay, so this is how you're going to take, and a lot of them were dealing with their younger siblings and stuff. And it's like, so these are the skills you need to help teach them and help bring them into this process of community building. And then, so that's kind of like expansion. We reached out, we found those people, and then we trained them. And then after we do this in quarterly periods. And so at the end, then we come back and we reflect and we're like, okay, so how did that go? What could we do better? What did we do well? We try to build on our strengths. And so it's like expansion and consolidation. So that's part of the systematic effort of how we community build.
Right. Yep. And a lot of the community building things that we do during expansion are not necessarily to grow the faith, but to grow the aims, the things that our faith is trying to accomplish, and we're finding people who are like-minded and would like to also work towards those same aims. Whether they call themselves Baha'i or not is not relevant. Whether they subscribe to the faith or not, as long as the aims, we would working towards creating more spiritual communities, creating for the junior youth more empowerment for self-expression, and helping them to use the arts to express themselves, and to and also to become involved in their community, to better their neighborhoods and communities. So, all right, we'll go on to paragraph 9. Do we have a volunteer to read?
Sure, I'll read it. Regardless of a community's starting point, it has advanced the process of growth when it has combined qualities of faith, perseverance, and commitment with a readiness to learn. In fact, a cherished legacy of this series of plans is the widespread recognition that any effort to advance begins with an orientation towards learning. The simplicity of this precept belies the significance of the implications that follow from it. We do not doubt that every cluster, given time, will progress along the continuum of development. The communities that have advanced most quickly, relative to those whose circumstances and possibilities were similar, have shown an ability to foster unity of thought and to learn about effective action, and they did so without hesitating to act.
Thank you, Paul. So taking on an approach where we're expecting to learn, right? And when you're in a learning mode, if you think of most of the time people say, well, kids learn so quickly, it's because that's sort of their orientation, is they're being given information, and there is an essential humility in them, because they are taking in information and and learning from it. So as long as you know that, and learning doesn't always go, it doesn't go without problems, but you'll make mistakes along the way. And I think maybe one of the future paragraphs is going to talk about that. Hey, there we go. Paragraph 10. Who would like to read this one?
I would.
Thank you, Emilio.
Then I'll say something later.
Okay.
A commitment to learning also meant being prepared to make mistakes, and sometimes, of course, mistakes brought discomfort and surprisingly new methods and approaching is where handled in at first, because of the lack of experience on ocean, a newly occurred capacity of the one kind and lost as a community become absurd observed in developing another, having the best of intentions is no guard or
Guarantee.
guarantee against making mistake steps, and moving past them requires both humility and detachment. When in a community has remained determined to show forbearance and learn from mistakes that naturally occur, progress that has never been in out for reach. Now, Drew, I sent a message to you on the chat.
Oh, yes, I saw that.
Okay, thank you, Emilio, for reading that.
Chat.
Emilio, let's focus on this for now, and then we can have the chat. We can do the chat later, okay? After 12 o'clock. All right?
Okay.
Thank you. So as we, any thoughts on this? To me, this is talking about on a community level, just like an individual, needs to have sort of this, be in the state of wanting to learn and having that humility. A community must do the same. As a community, you might realize that, hey, there's things that we may have done that didn't work out too well. Okay, how do we learn from that? How do we change course if that's what's needed? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was gonna say last night I was on a Zoom call where we were reflecting upon some of our activities, and one of this group of people, they were doing race unity just dialogues, and at some point there was like a group of Jewish people there, a group of African Americans there, and so they had been sharing all these different things, and at one point someone had shared I want to say a video or something from Louis Farrakhan, the very controversial leader of the Nation of Islam. And some of the Jewish participants were offended by this, right? Because they considered him anti-Semitic. And so there was this really big tension. So the Baha'is, who were largely outnumbered in this meeting, from what I understand, were trying to figure out how to best, navigate this and have an understanding, being like, yes, maybe, we have different views of different figures and different people, but yet we're all still here because we all believe that mankind is one, and we're trying to work together to create the oneness of mankind, right? And so how do we overcome some of our fears and our concerns about certain things? Be like, okay, I understand that you're coming from a little bit of a different place, but that's okay. We still have the same common goal. Let's keep working towards that goal. And so I thought it was very interesting that the Baha'is were trying so hard to navigate this very touchy thing, because normally what happens in cases like that is, you kind of, there's this tendency to just go tribal, be like, oh, those are the people who are others and they don't like me, and vice versa, right? And so it's a challenging thing. So it is hard. You can have the best of intentions, and things can happen. So I appreciate this.
Thank you, Chris. Any other thoughts?
Well, I would say that it looks straightforward enough, but it's a challenging thing to make mistakes, be uncomfortable, and consult to find out, well, what do we do now? To even look at it and say, oh, what is working, what is not, and often because there are different views on what is working and what is not as well. So, but I think the, from other reading I've done, just about, what do they call it? Anyway, the best kind of learning is something that allows for mistakes, and so this is a very healthy approach, but it's not necessarily easy to get used to it.
That's a great point. Thank you. All right. So paragraph 11, do we have a volunteer to read that one? All right, I will read it. Oh,
Sure.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Midway through the series of plans, the community's involvement in the life of society began to become the focus of more direct attention. The believers were encouraged to think of this in terms of two interconnected areas of endeavor: social action and participation in the prevalent discourses of society. These, of course, were not alternatives to the work of expansion and consolidation, much less distractions from it. They were inherent within it. The greater the human resources a community could call on, the greater became its capacity to bring wisdom contained in, I'm going to need help with the word, Baha'u'llah's revelation, to bear upon the challenges of the day, to translate his teachings into reality. And the troubled affairs of humankind over this period seem to underline how desperate was its need for the remedy prescribed by the divine physician. Implied in all this was a conception of religion very different from those holding sway in the world at large, a conception which recognized religions as the potent force propelling an ever-advancing civilization. It was understood that such a civilization would also not appear spontaneously of its own accord. It was the mission of Baha'u'llah's followers to labor for its emergence. Such a mission demanded applying the same processes of systemic learning to the work of social action and engagement in public discourse.
So yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about public discourse. So for example, what it looks like for us, Baha'is in Austin. So for example, many years ago, in around 1912, there was a white woman from Austin who was visiting her sister in Washington, D.C., and she happened to see a talk about the Baha'i faith. When she was attending a talk at Howard University. Of course, coming from Texas, it was during the segregation era. Going to interracial talks and stuff was not a very common thing for her. But she goes to Washington, D.C., she sees this talk, and then she comes back to Austin and helps and decides that she wants to start spreading this message of racial amity in Austin. So she invites a early Black Baha'i to come down to Austin to talk, and he gives talks at Houston-Tilliston College. Oh, back then it was two separate universities, Houston and Tilliston College. But yeah, he gives.
Yeah, they were Houston College and Tilliston Institute. They were
right.
You're right.
Yeah,
this was 19. What was the year again?
This was was this 1914? Was it
something around that?
It was something.
Sounds about right.
It was. And so she invites him there, and he gives some talks. Well, flash forward, like 80 years later, or whatever, 90 years later, we start a symposium at Houston-Tilliston University based on the man who gave the talks. His name was Louis Gregory. And this woman we're talking about, her name was Anna Ranke. But so now we have a symposium, a symposium on racial unity every year at Houston-Tilliston, although this past pandemic year we weren't able to host it. But it's interesting. So we invite people to talk about these different issues. We had a couple very interesting speakers. One time we had the mayor speak about racial equity, and that was very interesting. Another time we had an author come, and he talked about, his name was Tomlinson, and he's this white journalist whose family back in the day owned slaves. And amongst he wanted to document how his family fared after the end of slavery and stuff versus the family of the slaves. So his last name is Tomlinson. Well, he comes to find out that former NFL player, Pro Bowl player, LaDainian Tomlinson, was amongst the descendants of the slaves from his family. So he interviews like LaDainian Tomlinson, and it kind of shows like how slavery affected both the families quite differently, and talked about that. It was a fascinating talk. And so we talk about prevalent discourses of society. Yeah, being at the forefront of discourses on racial unity is important for us. And also, even people don't realize this, but Heman Sweat is the court downtown is named after a Baha'i who was the first African American admitted to the UT Law School. And so there's a symposium that we're not involved in as Baha'is, but it's the Heman Sweat Symposium every year. But so we want to be involved in these discourses of pushing forward how society is working towards racial unity.
It's a great example. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, for those not as familiar with Austin, but yeah, Houston-Tillotson University is considered an HBCU, a historically Black university. So, and you know, and today the leadership of Houston-Tillotson University, they're in support of this yearly symposium. Now it's been interrupted on account of the pandemic, but it had been going on continuously for about 13, 14 years, I believe, before that. So yeah, it's a much needed conversation. And I think one of the things that we as a community are trying to learn is how do we take that, which is currently an annual conversation, in one location, right? We do talk about the issue of race unity, across a lot of our endeavors and activities. But how do we take this one thing that we are doing now once a year, and have a very good relationship with the administration of the university and with the professors there, and they come and support it and talk, at it and sit on the panels. How do we go deeper and build a closer relationship that is, goes on throughout the year? So that's another thing that we, so we're constantly trying to figure out how do we do this better? How do we, how can we enter into deeper connections with the community at large? So I will move on to paragraph 12, and please do, like I said, feel free to interject and bring up questions or comments or insights. I would love that. So paragraph 12, anyone would like to read that one? So I'll read this one. Viewed from the perspective of the last 2.5 decades, the capacity for undertaking social action has risen markedly, leading to an extraordinary efflorescence of activity. Compared with 1996, when some 250 social and economic development projects were being sustained from year to year, there are now 1,500, and the number of Baha'i-inspired organizations has quadrupled to surpass 160. More than 70,000 grassroots social action initiatives of short duration are being undertaken each year, a 50-fold increase. We look forward to a continued rise in all these endeavors, resulting from the dedicated support and stimulus now provided by the Baha'i International Development Organization. Meanwhile, Baha'i participation in the prevalent discourses of society has also grown immensely. Besides the many occasions when the friends find they can offer a Baha'i perspective in conversations that occur in a work or personal context, more formal participation in the discourses has significantly advanced. We have in mind not only the much expanded efforts and increasingly sophisticated contributions of the Baha'i international community, which in this period added offices in Africa, Asia, and Europe, but also the work of a vastly augmented, greatly fortified network of national offices of external affairs, for whom this area of endeavor became the principal focus. In addition, there were insightful and notable contributions made by individual believers to specific fields. All this goes some way towards explaining the esteem, appreciation, and admiration which leaders of thought and other prominent figures at all levels of society have again and again expressed for the faith, its followers, and their activities. So I want to mention something here because there are a lot of different, names being mentioned here. The Baha'i international community is actually like a formal organization, a non-governmental organization that is that has its represents the Baha'is at the United Nations and offers perspectives, basically, the Baha'i perspective on various social matters, and ills. I mean, be it going, back to like the environment, and having statements on that, on world peace, on climate, and on racial unity and eliminating prejudices. And so some of these things are all, principles of our faith, including, eliminating extremes of wealth and poverty. So now this is talking about how in a more formalized manner, we've been doing these things on a global scale. And then they have opened offices. So it's not just the New York office now, but also, on other continents where this work is being, coordinated. So paragraph 13 is going to be a long one. There are 4 slides to it, and I would like if 2 people could, could volunteer to read them, and maybe they can, one person takes the first 2 and another person does the next 2.
I'll do the first 2.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? Can I just go back for a short second?
Absolutely. I'll go back with this one or the first slide of the paragraph.
Just the last thing that you read.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that the Baha'i International Community has the international website, baha'i.org. And if you also at the very top right-hand corner, it says all sites. You can click on that and you can see the site for Baha'i World News Service and various other of these offices that and national pages and such, that you can see what is being done in the Baha'i world, in short articles and such. It's just helpful, I find.
Yeah. Perhaps Chris can share a screen later on and show the website. Okay. Thank you, Drew. All right. So Chris is one of the readers. Another reader for paragraph 13?
Bill, I'll help out.
Thank you, Paul.
In reviewing the entire 25-year period, we are awed by the many kinds of progress the Baha'i world has made concurrently. Its intellectual life has thrived and demonstrated not only by its advances in all the areas of endeavor already discussed, but also by a volume of high-quality literature published by Baha'i authors, by the development of spaces for the exploration of certain disciplines in the light of the teachings, and by the impact of the undergraduate and graduate seminars systematically offered by the Institute for Studies in Global Prosperity, which, in collaboration with the institutions of the cause, now serves Baha'i youth from well over 100 countries. Efforts to raise up houses of worship have been very visibly accelerated. The last mother temple was erected in Santiago, Chile, and projects to build 2 national and 5 local metrical asgars. You go back. Were initiated. The houses of worship in Battambang, Cambodia, and Norte del Cauca, Colombia, have already opened their doors. Baha'i temples, whether newly dedicated or long established, are increasingly occupying a position at the heart of community life. The material support offered by the rank and file of the believers for myriad of endeavors undertaken by the friends of God have been unstinting, simply viewed as a measure of collective spiritual vitality. The generosity and sacrifice with which, at the time of considerable economic upheaval, the critical flow of funds has been maintained, nay, invigorated, is most telling. The Rome Baha'i administration, the capacity of national spiritual assemblies to maintain the affairs of their communities in all their growing complexity has been considerably enhanced. They have benefited in particular from new heights of collaboration with the counselors who have been instrumental in systematizing the gathering of insights from the grassroots across the world and ensuring they are widely disseminated. This was also the period in which the regional Baha'i councils emerged as fully fledged institutions of the cause, and in 230 regions now, councils and those training institutes they oversee have proved
themselves indispensable for advancing the process of growth. To extend into the future the functions of the chief trustee of Hukukula, the hand of the cause of God, Ali Muhammad Farka, the International Board of Trustees of Hukukula was established in 2005. Today, it coordinates the efforts of no less than 33 national and regional boards of trustees that now compass the globe, which in turn guide the work of over 1,000 representatives. The developments which occurred at the Baha'i World Center during this same period are many. Witness the completion of the terraces of the Shrine of the Bab and 2 buildings on the Ark, and the commencement of the construction of the Shrine of Abdul Baha. Not to mention a host of projects to strengthen and preserve the precious holy places of the faith. The Shrine of Baha'u'llah and the Shrine of the Bab were recognized as World Heritage Sites, places of inestimable significance for humanity. The public flocked to these sacred locations in their hundreds of thousands, approaching 1.5 million in some years. And the World Center regularly welcomed hundreds of pilgrims at once, sometimes more than 5,000 in a year, along with a similar number of Baha'i visitors. We are delighted as much by the raised numbers as by the scores of different peoples and nations represented among those who partake of the bounty of pilgrimage. The translation, publication, and dissemination of the sacred texts has also been greatly accelerated. In parallel with the development of the Baha'i Reference Library, one of the most notable members of the growing family of websites associated with Baha'i.org, which itself is now available in 10 languages. A variety of offices and agencies have been established, situated at the World Center and elsewhere, charged with supporting the process of learning unfolding across multiple areas of endeavor throughout the Baha'i world. All this, our sisters and brothers in faith, is but a fraction of the tale we could recount of what your devotion to him who was the wronged one of the world has brought forth. We can but echo the poignant words once voiced by the beloved master. When overcome with emotion, he cried out, "O Baha'u'llah, what hast thou done?"
Thank you. So there was a lot of things being listed here, and it comes, at the end of this section where is, looking at, what the Baha'i world has accomplished. So, I do, I'm oftentimes aware of how jargon sounds to someone who's not familiar with them, and I apologize to our friends who are new to to a lot of this. I'm happy to explain any of them and go over them, but a lot of these are things that different areas that the Baha'i world has been basically trying to push a lot of different buttons at the same, and going forward. And basically our Universal House of Justice just wants the Baha'i community to know, this is all the things that, we collectively have been doing. And so, there's so many things that go, beyond the initial, things that we were discussing, the expansion and consolidation, the community building. There's all these other things that we're also doing. It was mention was made of, I'll go back a couple of slides, actually to the first slide. This term here, three lines from the bottom, Mashriqul Askar, it means, it's the dawning place of the light of God, and it's basically it's a house of worship or a temple, but it's not just any building. I mean, our Baha'i Center is a repurposed building. It's a small space, relatively speaking. It is considered technically a house of worship, in the practical sense, but when in the Baha'i world, when we refer to a house of worship, it is a structure that has been, architects have offered designs. They have specific designs where they are symbolically built to have 9 symmetrical, or be symmetrical around 9 sides, have 9 entrances to be, and 1 sort of dome, which is symbolic of the thank you, very great visual, symbolic of people of all faiths being welcome for the purpose of worshiping God. And these are the continental houses of worship, meaning the Baha'i world up until a few years ago only had 1 on each continent. The continent of South America finally got theirs, and that's where I grew up, in South America, but not in the country of Chile. This is in Santiago. It's the one in the middle, and that is the latest one, and the continental house of worship to have been built, and the last one. It completed having one for every continent, including even Central America was recognized as a continent, and has its in Panama. So, and these, the one you're gonna plug the one from India. Go for it.
Yes, we have the architect of the Indian one speaking this Friday night, right?
The Indian one is an amazing one because it has more tourists visit that temple in New Delhi than the Taj Mahal, and it is part of it is also location. It is outside of New Delhi, but it's in the shape of a lotus flower, and so every one of them has a different architecture, but it's supposed to reflect sort of culturally something that is significant in the place where it resides. So I think as far as reading the message, the Ridván message, will be satisfied that we made it through section 2. Thank you for reading along. I would love to open it up for questions and comments, and we can also just go into a very informal chat. We can stop the live streaming, and we can just socialize and ask each other informal questions. Before we do, I would like to ask